There are three things that I want us to get out of the story of the Good Samaritan. First, you and I are the man left dead by the side of the road. And Jesus is the Good Samaritan who stopped and saved us. That's the first and most important thing that we need to know. The second is that the most loving thing we can do for anybody is to help them understand that they also are the man left dead by the side of the road, and that Jesus is the Good Samaritan who stopped and saved them. And finally, once we have those two things sorted out, then we need to learn that the best way to live our lives is to live lives of mercy. When in doubt, forgive. Err on the side of kindness and compassion. Let's take those one at a time. The first thing we want to get out of the story of the Good Samaritan is this: you and I are the man left dead by the side of the road. And Jesus is the Good Samaritan who stopped and saved us. The Christian message is not hard to understand. God created Adam and Eve in His image, pure and holy, and their job was to take care of the world, beginning with the Garden of Eden. God was creative, so He made them to be creative. God was relational, so He made them to be relational. God was free, so He made them to be free. They could freely choose to love Him, or they could freely choose to reject Him. Sadly, that's just what they did. Adam and Eve rejected God's rule and wisdom. They rebelled against His love. And of course, this was a complete failure. And they lost everything. By rebelling against God, they threw away both holiness and purity. They misused their freedom and became enslaved to sin, corruption, and death. And enslaved is the right word. Other good ones would be words like guilty, condemned, lost, dying, helpless, even damned. Spiritually speaking, they became like the man in Jesus' parable, the man left dead by the side of the road. He couldn't do anything for himself, and neither could they. And because Adam and Eve gave birth to the human race, they passed that problem along to the rest of us. Because of them, we are born enslaved, lost, condemned, even damned. Spiritually speaking, we are from birth just like the man in Jesus' parable, the man left dead by the side of the road, helpless, completely unable to save ourselves. The good news is that God is love. And in love, He refused to leave Adam and Eve and us lost and without hope. Out of unsurpassable love for us, God sent His only Son into the world. Baby Jesus, born of a virgin, God and man wrapped up in one person. He lived the life of holiness we hadn't, and then He made the sacrifice we couldn't. By His death and resurrection, we have been set free. Spiritually speaking, Jesus is the Good Samaritan who saved the ones who couldn't save themselves. The Christian message is really quite simple. On the one hand, you could spend your life studying Christian theology and never run out of material. That's basically my plan. But on the other hand, you can understand the Christian message in a matter of minutes. Quite simply, you and I are the man left dead by the side of the road, and Jesus is the Good Samaritan who stopped and saved us. The second thing we want to get from the story of the Good Samaritan is this: you and I need to love other people enough to tell them that they are also the man left dead by the side of the road, and that Jesus is the Good Samaritan who stopped and saved them. For most people, evangelism, witnessing, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't come easy. On our annual trip to Honduras, we actually practice how to tell people the story of Jesus. And almost everyone who goes gets a chance to spend a day or so in the evangelism station. Especially for those doing it for the first time, it can be intimidating. Even for veterans, it can be intimidating. Although I personally find it easier to share my faith in Jesus with strangers than with friends. After all, if someone rejects me down in Honduras, odds are I'm never going to see him again. But a friend or a neighbor, somebody I see all the time, that's harder. Why is it that most of us struggle with sharing our faith? I don't have the answer for that. But I do think that the best motivation for sharing our faith is love. Think of somebody that you love. What wouldn't you do for them? What wouldn't you sacrifice for them? You'd risk everything for someone you love. Okay, if we really believe that Jesus is our only hope and that we are lost without His saving help, then the most loving thing we can do for anybody is to find smart ways to share the gospel message. And I mean it when I say we need to find smart ways to share the gospel. Nobody wants us to beat them over the head with the Bible, and nobody wants to find out that they're living next door or working with the church lady. Goodness knows there are plenty of obnoxious Christians in the world. They mean well, but most of what they do is actually what I would call anti-evangelism. It's almost like they're fired up to find ways to turn people off Jesus. How do we avoid making that mistake? There's no end to the books or videos or classes you could take. We're using one called Be the Message for a congregation-wide small group study right after Easter. And without getting ahead of the game, I think part of the answer is for the world outside of the church to see the church filled with loving people who want to make a difference. People who are trying to solve problems and make the world a better place. For my money, a life of kindness and compassion will advance the cause of Christ and reach the lost better than anything else. And that brings us to our last lesson from today's Bible story. The third thing we want to get out of the story of the Good Samaritan is this: out of pure thankfulness for our salvation, we have to be committed to living lives of love, mercy, and kindness. The world around us is filled with people who have been left dead by the side of the road. And you don't have to be Mother Teresa to do something about it. You don't have to quit your job, sell your house, and move halfway around the world. Some of us might be called to do that. But usually you can find someone who needs your help only halfway across your neighborhood, if that far. Trust me, you work with someone who's hurting. You go to school with someone who's hurting. You go to church with someone who's hurting. Do you know who they are? Do you know how you can help them? There's no shortage of groups you can volunteer with. As a church, we have some favorites. I can point you in their direction. But just this once, I want you to think smaller, not bigger. Instead of looking for a world-class cause or a local not-for-profit, why not just look around you for one hurting person? Just one person you can befriend and really get to know. Make it personal. Make it real. Don't be a volunteer. Be a friend. Don't give to a cause. Just do life with someone who needs you. It's like Jesus was saying, look for a chance to be a neighbor. I think that more than anything else might open the right door at the right time to share the message with someone you've come to love. There are three things that we want to get out of the story today. You and I are the man left dead by the side of the road. Jesus is the Good Samaritan who stopped and saved us. The most loving thing we can do for anyone is help them understand that they also are the man left dead by the side of the road. Jesus is the Good Samaritan who stopped and saved them too. And once we have that sorted, then we need to learn that the best way to live our lives is to live lives of love, mercy, and kindness. When in doubt, forgive. always err on the side of compassion. Amen?